We have our first ever industry panel event for FiXT Academy. Super excited to be hosting this and having some great panelists involved. Just to give a quick round of intros and welcome everybody. We'll go through a couple of slides. But first, our mission here at FiXT Academy is to empower artists to build sustainable careers in ways not previously possible to them. And that is an extension of FiXT's mission statement as a label. Really excited to welcome our panelists here. Ian from Hopeless, the Executive Vice President of Hopeless Records. Ian, you guys have such a long legacy as a label. Really excited for you to share some of your wisdom. What's a quick intro for kind of your role and what you do at Hopeless?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm our executive vice president here at Hopeless Records. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary as a label. We're a LA-based boutique label, mostly focusing on rock and alternative. We come from the punk space, if you're not familiar with us. We're all over at the Warped Tour and places like that. I started 20 years ago at the label as a entry-level marketing person when the company was 5 or 6 people and a handful of bands. And I was lucky enough to be a part of helping build the label. I was our head of marketing for quite a bit. Then I was our general manager, and now I'm our EVP, handling mostly label strategy, business development, and commercial partnerships, international, and just any ways the business can grow and expand and help our artists get to the next level.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Ian. Next, we have Randall Foster from Symphonic Distribution. And Randall, you guys have also a long-standing reputation as a distribution company. Yeah, take us through a quick intro on your role there and the company.
Awesome. Thanks, James. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Symphonic. Symphonic is a 20-year-old distribution company that started as a bootstrap project from an artist who wasn't getting the attention he needed from distributors that existed at the time, and has existed on that ethos ever since. In my role as Chief Creative Officer, I oversee 36 A&Rs worldwide, as well as all of our other creative endeavors, whether it be music publishing or sync licensing. I also oversee our physical distribution business, as well as our YouTube and user-generated content monetization units. So I wear varied hats here, but my favorite thing on earth is to sit down and talk to artists about strategies and ways to win. And I'm really excited to be on this panel. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Randall. Next, Connor Systrom from Monstercat, an enormous cultural label in dance music, and super excited for you to be here. Connor, share a little on your role and Monstercat.
Yeah, excited to be here. So I think I can jump in with the Monstercat stuff first. So, we're a dance electronic label, like you mentioned, that was born out of being a YouTube channel at first back in 2011, and that grew through our community that we had into a sustainable label. We have a few sub-labels under us, including Uncaged, which is like all of our drum and bass and hardstyle, dubstep, heavier stuff. Silk being our more chill house, melodic, meditative type friendly electronic music. And then Instinct, which is our far more commercial leaning, mainstream leaning dance part of the umbrella. And yeah, we've had folks like Cascade come through our doors, Marshmallow. I'm looking at a platinum record in front of me for Marshmallow, and Noise Storm and Vice Tone with some gold records. And it's been really fun. I've been with the company since 2013, started out as our press manager, essentially, that then evolved into the world of streaming and radio eventually. And so now I oversee a team of folks for the streaming and radio department. Basically, we're the intermediaries between Monstercat, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, you name it, as well as obviously on the radio front with digital and terrestrial, so seriously for US dance radio space or top 40 space, as well as UK and other key dance market.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to have you here. Dustin from Industry Plant Music. Dustin, we've known each other for quite a few years. Always love your insights and interesting insights into the industry and approaches to things. So what's going on at Industry Plant Music?
We are 2 months old. If you were to Google Industry Plant, you will likely not find us at all. We are a brand new creative agency, mostly focused on country right now, though I hope to pick up some rock acts at some point in the future because I'm a Hopeless Records fan. That's my world that I grew up in, Avenged Sevenfold
Awesome.
especially. So yeah, dude, it's kind of cool being on a panel with you because I love that. It's like one of my favorite record labels growing up. But
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
yeah. But our focus is on artist branding and how that leverage branding and song values into marketing and leveraging marketing to its fullest extent. I also am on a podcast with a couple other people called My Point 4 Cents, which has been really fun. We had James on not too long ago. And if you search me online, you'll find that. You'll find my own personals that you can follow and learn from me. But yeah.
Yeah, excited to have you here. And Kurtis from FiXT, our vice president and wearer of many hats as well. Kurtis, what are you doing at FiXT?
I'm doing a lot. I'm happy to be here, first of all, but I'm the vice president, as James mentioned, of the independent record label FiXT, which I'm sure you all know, founded by Cell Dweller. We specialize in rock, metal, industrial, electronic music, and I oversee operations across our distribution, marketing, sync licensing, physical products, and some artist development. But my role really is just trying to connect artists with their biggest fans and help them kind of have sustainable careers in the music industry.
And, across all of you here, I really tried to curate a fun group. And we've got labels, marketing agency, multiple genres, distribution. So very excited to kind of get the diversity of perspectives here to really bring some value to everybody that's attending, primarily focused on independent artists and independent labels. So I'm just going to kick off some initial questions, jump right in, and these are open for anybody on the panel to jump in. Streaming and radio kind of being the first topic, which is one that everybody likes to talk about in the industry. And really want to ask you, what are the smartest strategies for independent artists to stand out on DSPs today, given how saturated streaming has become?
It's a tough one. I think that one of the glaring issues right now, right, is the idea of how much music is being uploaded onto Spotify every single day, and how the rate of which that is increased. I think the last number from like 2023 was 120,000. From 2021, it was 90,000, and it continues to go up. So that saturation is a very real thing when you are trying to look at streaming as an entire landscape. But I think that that's where there's a bit of a flaw in thinking for a lot of folks in trying to compete with everyone. And I think that's what it is to me, is finding, let's say, anywhere from, it doesn't matter what size you are, 30,000 monthly listeners, 300,000 monthly listeners, finding a loyal and reliable fan base to work from, and then everything else you can build off of. I think that when you're trying to strategize around outside forces, whether it be independent playlist or, a viral moment happening, or, editorial from a platform, if you're starting from that without approaching your own fan base and having a reliable place to lean on, then you're putting the cart before the horse. I think that if you get that strong, loyal, and doesn't matter how niche it is fan base, you can build from there rather than trying to go the other direction.
Yeah,
I think
oftentimes. Go ahead, Randall.
Yeah, I think that a lot of artists put the playlist ahead of the fans, and the thought is like, if I get the playlist, then I'm going to get fans, which could not be further from the truth. As an artist, I think it's important. Like, the playlisting is the reward for a job well done. It's not the goal. The goal is to sell tickets to a show so that you can sell merch, so you can make real money, so you can afford to live, because streaming doesn't pay nearly as much as touring does. But I think people really lose sight of the whole ecosystem because of the focus we've put on playlists and on streaming success. Go ahead, Dustin. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that was what I was going to say. I was just talking to an artist who the first song that they released ever, they got on New Country, and they were ecstatic, and it was super exciting. And I'm like, hey, just FYI, you're going to come off this playlist, and hopefully we'll get moved. That's the goal, is that you push the streams there, listeners there, and you get moved to something else. And I was like, but don't expect people to come out of the woodworks and save your song and re-listen. Like, this is their first touch point, and that's really what it boils down to. And even worse, you can't retarget them, really, maybe through marquee ads or something, but for the most part, it's kind of dead end marketing. To me, it is a symptom of success, not the first step into creating a fandom.
Totally. Yeah, I think that it's the way that we often describe it is you need that foundational fan base, and things like editorial, or let's say just in the dance music space with Apple Music being able to do DJ mixes for Apple, those are all things that help fan the flame and ideally build that fan base from its core into those outer edges and continue to expand and especially build that inner core of your fan base from what you've already established. But if you're relying on that at the get-go, it's moving targets that are nearly impossible to catch.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of build a sonic and a visual brand identity that people can connect with. I think there might be a misconception that you need 30 million fans to have a successful career, because you really don't. You can sell tickets, you can sell merch, sell vinyls, whatever you want, if you just have a really strong fan base of a tight little group of super fans who will be there for you when you need them to be.
There are so many artists on Spotify and elsewhere that I will not name, but you look at the monthly listener count, it's like, oh my God, like this person's got to be a global phenomenon. And if you have access to the back end, it's like, well, how many of those are actually active listeners, right? How many of those are truly going to go out and, like you were saying here, buy your tickets? How many of them are going to go and pre-save your album on Countdown? So many of it is just like people passing through, and that's not a sustainable model.
Which is funny because it was like that in country for a long time too. I mean, it still is in a lot of ways, but country always went after radio, and you would have these radio hits, and then they can't sell any tickets, and that's always been a thing that's funny in country. But yeah, and I still talk to artists where I'm running ads, let's say, to streaming. And I'm like, hey, let's run some ads to merch. And they're like, yeah, but what about the streaming? And I'm like, you have a fan base. Do you want to make some money? And they're like, well, that's what the streaming's for. And I'm like, oh, let's sell some merchandise. Let's actually make money. I am sort of curious on, just to follow up on James's question, the rest of the panel, because I always try to think about, if I'm an artist watching this, it's like, okay, fine. Like, that's not that great. But how do I like pitch? How do I at least give myself a leg up? Because why not? And I'm kind of curious what you guys do on that end.
I can if you want. Sorry.
Sure.
So I think that like one of the things that's so key there is coming back to what we're talking about is like, if you're showing a proven loyal fan base, you're showing proven loyal users of a platform that are driving to that platform, speaking, to listen to your music. If you're able to express that in your pitch, that is going to be way better than any window dressing of like, this song is sick and it's a banger. Da, 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 da. At the end of the day, every single streaming platform's core goal is platform retention. If you can prove that with your fan base in pitching, and then you just kind of think from that while you're pitching and how you can expand, and maybe give it some color if you want, that should be your starting.
Well, and you have to think about it like a real estate transaction. I mean, they have real estate we want. In the old days of retail, you could do price and positioning. You could pay for the end cap. You could pay for that placement. You're paying as an artist, you're paying for that placement by bringing people to the party. And that's what they're looking at in those analytics when they look, trying to see what kind of followership you have and what kind of engagement you have. The engagement you have on Instagram is going to affect what's happening on Spotify, because your call to action on Instagram is going to affect that. And so I think a lot of people think really myopically about Spotify has become the scoreboard for the industry. Everybody wants to get their numbers up and all this, but all of these things are intertwined. And I think the question Dustin asked was, what can you do to heighten your chances? And I think, in all honesty, Connor, I think you're absolutely right. But I also think giving yourself ample lead time, building a solid marketing plan around every single that's bespoke to the single, and then delivering those marketing drivers to the DSP, whether it be through Spotify for Artists or whether, like Symphonic artists, we pitch, delivering the metadata to us and the marketing drivers to us, so we can go do our best work, or so that Dustin can do his best work. Your outside hires, I think, is really important.
Like 2-3 days you need, right?
That gives me an answer.
Ian, I wanted to make sure and come back if you had something to add there, or just what's your perspective on this, from Hopeless, from your experience there?
I'd agree largely with this group that it's at this point really about meaning something to your fan base and all that, especially at the independent level starting out. Editorial's driving less than ever. I wouldn't count on something like that making you a career. That's really something from, like almost 10 years ago at this point. Not unimportant, but we're not seeing that as something that makes a career. I would say, to put a little bit finer point on some of the stuff that was said, mean something in your genre and focus on momentum versus size. Like outside of maybe contemporary country and pop and a few other areas, there's no killer playlist that really change the game for you. I mean, we have artists on Marrow, which is the top Spotify rock playlist, and we're grateful for that. But the career is largely the same the next day. And it's just another piece of the puzzle marching upwards. And we're grateful to have that. That's a larger level get. But even then, it's not changing our situation dramatically. So, you really can't even control this so much at your level with what you're doing. So focus on the best practices. They matter more than you could ever imagine. The lead time, filling out all the stuff, like everyone else said, have a case for why you matter. They're looking to put artists on playlists that matter. And even if you get a favor and get put on a playlist by some chance, the data drives this so much now that you're going to be kicked off the playlist within a day or two if it's not performing. So this really does you no good. Focus on fans and best practices, and the streaming, that's just a reflection of your popularity. It'll largely take care of itself until you're at a later level where I think, label style promotion would really benefit you.
You said something there that I kind of want to get everybody's take on. So many artists, getting on a playlist, they feel like that's the moment that's going to change everything. But not just a playlist, signing a label deal, getting on this tour. I think a lot of artists have this mindset that there's this one magic bullet that's going to change everything. But my experience for 20 years is like it's the accumulation of so many small moments. What are some of your thoughts on that, or conversations you have with your clients or artists or colleagues?
I don't think there's any one moment, like signing to a label, getting a playlist, like that grind doesn't stop and it can't ever stop. If you ever I would encourage people not to get comfortable and not to get complacent, because really the long haul, I think, is where the success is at.
But it's such a recipe for artists to be unhappy, because I think, I was a previous artist and I used to think that like you're kind of working towards some big moment and then there is no such thing. So you're generally unhappy all of the time, when really you're just a business that opens every day and you go to work and you go home and, that's the job, and there's ebbs and flows and moments of magic and moments of like depression. It's just a business. And so the real question is, are you sustainable? Are you happy? Are you working all the time, or are you able to rest? And so you need to frame your career in that way.
Well, and the question of, do you want to have to put a suit and tie on to go to work and make a living, or do you want to keep doing what you're doing? The Deftones just released a record. The Deftones have been around forever. It's fucking incredible. Unabashed fanboy. But the Deftones just released a record. I wasn't even aware. My daughter tells me. 15-year-old daughter.
Dude, the kids like Deftones now. It's crazy.
But think about the career arc the Deftones have had. They're pushing at least 25 years doing what they're doing, probably more like 30. They keep doing it because A, they enjoy it, but B, because if you let up, that momentum stops and nothing is sustainable forever. There's evergreens, and we all know the evergreens that exist out there, but your chances of being an evergreen, few and far between.
We're seeing this with a lot of our artists too, the ones who've been around 15 plus years having their biggest moments now by far. And the common thread is, one, sticking around that long, but also having a super strong brand. That's something definable that really sums up a genre or time period. All those bands seem to be getting much, much bigger. And the artists who are a little more anonymous from previous eras are, largely being forgotten, unfortunately.
Yeah. Like one for us is Infected Mushroom. I think that they are a perfect example, similar to Seldor, where it's like, it's not necessarily mainstream dance, right? Neither of them would ever be on like a, hitting the top of the charts in a US dance radio format, but they have both mastered their fan bases and continue to drive new music, interaction with their fans. They're continuing to engage with that fan base to make a really thriving career. We have more Infected Mushroom music coming up this year. I'm super excited about. Shameless plug. But I think that it might be cheesy, but the thing that I kind of approach with this is like a Kaizen method. If anyone here knows that, of just taking big steps and turning them into the smallest of tiniest of steps for artists. So like an example for, a small growing artist is build out some playlists to share their fans of, not just your music, but stuff that has inspired you in your process, right? To me, that's a win for an artist. They may not feel that way because it isn't an outside force that has validated them, But to me, that's a big win heading in the right direction for them having a thriving career in the future.
I'd also add streaming's a lot bigger than just Spotify at this point.
Yeah.
YouTube is, and others, but especially YouTube's a very interesting account where especially as a new artist or any artist, but especially new, you really need to define yourself. And Spotify gives you a pretty narrow way to do that. But with YouTube, you can make any kind of content you want. It is on you, but if I were just starting out, or in the first phase of my career, I would focus very much on YouTube and creating a definable brand there that's very shareable amongst fans.
Well, and YouTube is the #1 music discovery platform on earth still today.
Yeah, it's amazing. We think it's going to grow quite a bit moving forward.
To kind of people, there's whole countries that use it. I mean, Brazil, that's their search engines.
To continue where some of this conversation is going into artist development and audience building, what do you jump in, anybody, what do you think the most important long-term investment an artist can make right now? Is it branding? Is it content? The audience building? What are those most important pieces?
Man, we just answered how it's all important right now. I will say that I think a lot of mistakes, and even as a marketer, I made this mistake for years until I saw how it could work differently, is not understanding why it is both your brand and your music, it could be valuable to somebody. That they go into just making content and their whole goal is just to disrupt. Not really understanding is simply disrupting, going to build fans. And I'll use an example. There's a video that went viral of a musician where he tied a rope to his leg and then to a car, and the car starts to drive off, right? And it looks like it's about to pull him, but he's performing his song. It's disruptive, and it worked because it's disruptive. But then the question goes, does it, the disruption, does the content itself brand well with who you are? Because if not, I saw people repeating this, I'm like, hey, work for that artist because he's sort of irreverent and he's rock, and it made sense because there's danger, and danger is a value of his brand. But now you have a country artist who has none of that, who's doing the same thing. It's not going to connect with the right audience that you want. And so I think sitting down and understanding, why would somebody hit play on my music? Is it because they're feeling cathartic? Is it because they need to release or self-expression, or they need to work out? What are those reasons? And figure that out first before you start establishing content and doing all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think also a lot of direct-to-fan channels. So people really forget about email lists. But man, is it important to have an email list and to grow an email list, because those are people that you could keep hitting up every time you have a new piece of merch, every time you have a release, and they will grow with you throughout the years. And we kind of talked about Spotify and maybe not being able to control that versus what you can control. So you can control how you message these people. And I would say also, if you look back at maybe 20 years ago in the music industry, social media didn't exist, and you didn't really have a way to communicate directly with your fans. But now you do. You can communicate directly as much as you want and for free. So I think building kind of those direct-to-fan channels is important.
Yeah, we think that's more important than anything else. It really, really always has been, but moving forward, it's just more and more clear as we enter a space where the opportunities for commerce that got touched on earlier, the 1,000 fans idea, a lot of that stuff really matters when you can do direct to fan commerce. If it's at Spotify, it's terrible for you, but if you can sell to these people, it's incredible. And we're very focused on that for our artists. So I would agree with that, as well as just meaning something to your fans and what putting yourself in their shoes. Why would they share this with their friend? You got to see this. If your content's not having that, it's it's probably missing the mark at this point. And I'd really say all that stuff you said, James, branding, all those things, but those can be dangerous ways to fall into, a $1,000 photo shoot and an expensive publicist, and you now have no core message, right? This really shouldn't cost money. It should cost time, and it should cost anxiety and worry, but it shouldn't be costing you a lot of money in the early days. It's more about an idea than anything fancy.
Do you think it's then having a reason and having a purpose? Meaning, don't just put something out on socials because you need to or because it's expected of you, but really have a reason, kind of tell your story, get that out there?
We think that helps. I mean, political motivated artists do well for a reason like this. It kind of defines things. It doesn't have to be. We've had artists where their theme is no theme. It's just fun. We like being in a band, and they can make that work. It doesn't have to be something heavy, but I just think the idea that you're kind of an anonymous band playing an anonymous music right now is we have, AI for that and other things. But the fan connection, that's not replaceable by those things. That's not that's what we do. So I would focus there and not really worry about much of the rest. That stuff will take care of itself. I mean, we have artists who have huge careers in Spotify that built their brands and their following before that platform even existed, right? So these things will follow you throughout your career if you can build an audience that cares about you and you continue to mean something to them.
Well, and the brand is, in our mind, not the photo shoot. It's not the imagery, which is a part of it. It's what you just said. It's the story. It's the theme. And even when you said, well, some of them don't have it, sometimes it's just fun. Well, that's it, right? It's fun. I mean, that is also, and so if you look deep at your music, there is something there. You don't have to be a heavy artist or political, like some stuff, like you guys have that one artist, what's his name? X2. He's very political.
TX2, yeah.
TX. Oh my God. A lot of artists look at him and they go, his messaging is fantastic because it connects directly to his, and a lot of artists are like, that's the only way to grab attention. And certainly political stuff grabs attention right now, but you can go another way with it. It doesn't have to be that.
Yeah. And he's done some political stuff, but more so it's really about embracing the formats. We're doing a lot of, this is all led by him. One of the smarter marketing artists we've ever worked with. Really enjoyed getting to see that process up close. But a lot of it is just leaning into what's happening. He's doing skits on short form that lead into the song. So it's not just the song, and all that's tying back to a larger underlying idea of who the artist is. For him, he does a lot of who's against TX2, and that helps define the artist. That's one way to do it. You don't
create
have
an
to
underdog.
do it that way. But yeah, that's sort of that narrative, and he gets a good amount of hate from kids online and other artists. Some of that's hard to deal with as an artist or as like his friends and partners to see. But at the same time, it's also kind of fueling the career that's helping spread the message of like, oh, you got to see this, whatever it is, even if I don't like it. I do think that sort of hate narrative is far overblown. It's being widely accepted and is quickly becoming one of our largest artists. It's there's a lot of support for TX2 out there, but it's a good example of an artist who's just using the current tools available to do what we were talking about. He has a brand, has an idea.
He's not afraid to experiment too.
Yeah, that's the biggest. He's not afraid. He's willing to get some shit. Yeah.
I'm sure there's like a trail of failed ideas before he started landing things too. And I think that artists like that are winning, not because they found something that really works for them. Well, that is why, but it's the trail of failed content and branding experiences along the way where they looked at it and said, maybe it's this, and they tried it and it didn't work. And so many artists are afraid to fail that they don't establish that value.
That's sort of been a hard shift for us coming out of the traditional label space where you did kind of have an element of at least imagined control over things. And you're only putting out so many singles, especially like maybe 10 plus years ago. To now, our artists and team are needing to get comfortable with a song did great. And then another song came out and like didn't really get a lot of attention for whatever reason. And then keep moving forward and not putting too much stock into that and like continuing to take shots along the larger path. So that's been our experience. I don't know what else you guys have seen.
Yeah, I think that you guys are really touching on something that I think about a lot of. Branding is basically a through line between you as an artist, but also your music. I think about like one of our artists, Armin Hammer, produced melodic bass, which is kind of that, very epic cinematic feeling, but very emotional dance music subgenre. They only have, I think right now, like 350,000 monthly listeners, but they portray in their branding something so much more epic. And I think so much of that comes from they have a large contingency of that fan base that is just so rabidly loyal. And so it's like this big festival type of feel to all of their branding because of just the raw emotion that comes from their music. And that really, really loyal contingency that kind of plays off a lot of the classic Blur sort of feel of that genre. It's so in my eyes, it's finding that through line, but then also having faith in that through line.
I want to remind or tell everybody that's in the attendee window, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A section that you can drop questions in as we're going. Feel free to drop those in and we'll have some Q&A at the end. So please do throw some questions in. I wanted to, Randall, kick a question over to you.
Hot seat.
Coming from the distribution side of things, as a distribution company, but whether it's a distributor or a label that might have direct deals or be Merlin members working with DSPs, How has the role of distribution shifted from just pipes and delivery to more strategic thinking about distribution and more of a strategic approach?
That's a big question with a long answer to. And I appreciate the fact that you didn't send it to me ahead of time so I could have actually prepared for it. Thank you for that, James.
Take it wherever you want to take it.
Well, I mean, music has certainly been democratized over the past 20 or so years, right? There were not very many distributors when we started out, and now it seems like they're popping up out of the woodwork left and right. On top of that, they're being swallowed up by the majors as quickly as possible while there's basically a land grab going for market share. I think the role of distributor has changed a bit in that a lot of the jobs and things that labels formerly did or that artists formerly relied on a label to do are now able to be handled partially or wholly by a distribution company. And that's no dig on my label friends here at all. It's just it speaks to the evolution of the space. Distribution's really broken into, kind of two sectors. You've got your DIY, flat fee, no service, nickel and dime you for this or that throughout your existence there, wait a week and a half for a reply to your email when you have an issue, distributors who will go unnamed. And then you have your more full service distributors. We like to refer to ourselves as white glove. And so we aren't label services. I think label services is a 4-letter word because it means broken promises a lot at the end of the day. But I do think that there are elements where distributors can overserve and can help compensate for the lack of a full label staff. And that's one of the things we try to do. We work with lots of key partners, Dustin being one of them, on multiple projects where people come in needing a full suite of marketing services. They need content shoots and things like that. We're not a marketing company, but we are a B2B relationship marketing company, and we talk to the DSPs, and that's what people really want us to do. So I think that with all of the rules that are at play and with all of the new edicts coming down from the major label lords on high about whether or not you can use things like discovery, whether you can use these marketing tools that are built in for us by the DSPs that we're able to leverage to help market and help push this boulder up a hill. I think that having a strategic relationship with a full service distributor is definitely valuable. In this day of do it yourself, yeah, you can do it all by yourself, but why would you want to do it all by yourself? I'm really good at turning a wrench. I can change my own oil, but I don't like to get my hands dirty, and it's a waste of time. It's better for me to concentrate on creative endeavors and on the things that bring me joy. And so I think that that's really where the evolution has come through with distributors. And I think, it's a case where, the service offerings need to be considered. The way you're treated needs to be considered. Are you just a number, or do you have people there? Do you have people that will answer your emails? I mean, even these guys, I don't claim to know your distribution setups perfectly between Monstercat and Hopeless, but I believe Hopeless is direct to the DSPs, so they're handling all of those things, all of those tasks. And I assume that Monstercat's probably leaning on the parent company just a little bit for some.
A little bit, but yeah, it's also direct as well.
That relationship and having that strategic partnership and that strategic relationship, I think, is more important today than it ever has been, just because there's so many boxes to check when you distribute music today.
Dustin, I don't know if you raised your hand or if you were wanting to jump in or not.
No, I'm a boomer and I misclicked that.
I definitely agree with what Randall said. And I saw a question in the chat here about like why label, basically. And to me, I've been doing this for a while now, and I've seen most of the models. I like where we're at. I mean, there's plenty of problems with the landscape, but I think now more than ever, an artist really has choice over what to do with their business, where they didn't in the past. There's so many inappropriate pairings, artists getting signed to labels just so they didn't get signed to some other label, and then just not being the right place for them, or distribution companies that just don't do anything, and then you're stuck there, or some real predatory stuff in that space on the fringes that really sucks. But mostly there's really good actors, and you now as an artist can make a choice. Like, do I want to pay for services? Because that's really what you're doing. For a boutique label, you're paying primarily in whether it's a license or a work for hire. If you're paying, a distribution company, you're paying, a fee, or there's different models, but you can make a choice that's appropriate for your business. And as a label who's, our thing is a boutique and we build careers, and that's not lots of artists. That's, a handful. That's what we do. Other partners do stuff way better than we do. But this is what we do. I like that when we're signing artists now, hey, maybe they did a record on a Symphonic and I can see what it did. And now they're in a place where they do need a whole different level of services and they would benefit from that. Where maybe they wouldn't have before. And even before they were ready for Symphonic, they really should have been doing stuff on their own because they were just getting going. There's lots of different scenarios out there now, which I think is really great for artists that's just starting out. I would encourage you not to jump into something too early. Find good people and find a situation that's appropriate for you where you're at now. Like if you're a brand new artist, being on a big label is not going to really help you that much.
In fact,
I
it
think-
could hurt you.
Yeah, I think that,
Yeah.
you absolutely nailed that, Ian. Like, figuring out, like, A, building your fan base, B, figuring out what it is through that process and releasing a bit on your own and having that experience to understand what it is that you need support on as an artist. Because some teams might be really great at, let's say, syncing partnerships. If your music seems like it's going to fit really well with video games, like that, like that's something that we do pretty well. Or if it's, a label that has great history in the radio space of the genre that you're in, like needing to know what it is that you need support in is going to allow you to identify what label that you want to work with if you want to work with label. I think that one of the most exciting things as a label is that we are, in a sense, like forced to show and exhibit that value that a label can bring when there are these options of you can completely do everything yourself. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
I wouldn't mind chiming in though and saying that I know that when most of these artists are talking about like labels, what they're really saying is money. They're really like, right? Like that's when they think about Monstercat or Hopeless, it's like knowledge and money and access probably. And the reality is that as much damage as money and access can do for you, it doesn't compare to the channels, the content channels that exist right now. So much of you can do as an artist, you can do without a label. You can get that fan base and that audience and connect with them. And most of the time, it's really just spending time on the internet in the places that your fans are going to be. So it's having that content, having that structure, and then existing both digitally in these spaces and then physically go to shows and hang out. Because the things that like Hopeless or Monstercat or a major can do are specific to whatever need you have. I worked with Zach Top from a very young artist to where he is now. I no longer work with him as of 2 months ago, but I will tell you that we built it without a label to where he had about 800,000 monthly listeners. And we did that entirely digitally. Now we stagnated, we plateaued at 800,000 because at that point you did need radio. You did need a lot of money for influencer marketing. You did need press. There was an elevation that was necessary. And so there was a point where it says, okay, we're going to get stuck here unless he signs with the label. But then he had leverage, right? And he actually turned down all these major labels and went with an indie because that indie, just like Monstercat and Hopeless, had very specific niche strategies that he needed. And it's more valuable.
And as the distributor he was with before he went to the labels, those are good moments for independent distributors. If I can work with someone and spin them up and have them blow up, Doechii started with us. She swept the rap categories at the Grammys this year. Like that's like the height of pride for us. And it wasn't fully independent. It was a JV with a major. Get it right, Dustin.
I did not know that. So I'm happy to be corrected. I apologize.
Randall, as a distributor, you're I assume you guys have some genre specialties that maybe you have attracted, but in some sense, you're probably fairly genre agnostic, where FiXT, Monstercat, Hopeless has certain genre lanes that we typically work within. How do you think about your approach to this without having a niche genre to focus entirely on?
We are genre agnostic, my favorite phrase. Our approach to it genre by genre is very similar. Here's when I started at Symphonic nearly 7 years ago, we were really well known as a Latin distributor, an EDM distributor, and kind of an underground hip hop distributor. It was kind of where we had cut our teeth. Bad Bunny started with us right in the beginning of reggaeton. Like this is kind of the house Bad Bunny built in a lot of ways. And I got here being in Nashville, Tennessee, and they're saying, hey, we want you to spin up a rights organization for us, and we want you to do some A&R and sign bands and sign labels in Nashville. I said, yo, we got to change the messaging. If this is the case, we can't be that Latin distributor and me running around Nashville trying to sign country acts. It's not going to work. And so we did a lot of work with regards to what are the basic blocking and tackling that applies to every record that you distribute? Because press outlets and audience withstanding, it's kind of the same. Like the tasks I have to take or that an artist has to take to break a rock record is very much the same as what you have to do to break a rap record or to break a country record. It's all about release cadence. It's all about marketing mix around all those singles. It's all about an engaged audience. If you guys are not walking around away saying the words engaged audience, you're not listening today, because all of my fellow panelists here have said it, which means that they're all brilliant, because I say it all the time, and I'm not brilliant, but I surround myself with brilliant people. So but all of these things have to exist. It does not matter. It does not matter if these aren't happening. You're kind of dead in the water. I mean, behind me hanging on the wall is a plaque from a jazz group. If you called me 5 years ago and said, are you good at jazz? We're going to do our best. We'll try our hardest. It's going to be the same kind of stuff. We back-to-back jazz Grammys. We're not a jazz company, but we won the category because we've got the right artist that has the right mix, that has the right work ethic, that's doing all the right things. And so, I think, looking at Monstercat and Hopeless, these are two like bastions of cultural force musically. They have an entire aura. You say Hopeless Records, I'm like Dustin. I'm like, oh man,
Thank you.
Hopeless. and Monstercat too on the EDM side, and there is a really solid place for that in the marketplace. But I don't think that anybody from any of my competitor distribution companies would be like, oh well, we only do this well, or we only do this well. The reality is we distribute well. And you need somebody who knows how to market those things. Now, on the pitching side, I will say we do have genre specialists. So like if you come in here with reggae, we've got somebody who's going to pitch reggae. If you come in here with country, or you come in here with pop or hip hop, there are different team members who will handle those activities and handle the messaging on that. But at the 10,000 foot view of this company, we remain agnostic.
I want to go a level under distribution, and this certainly flows into distribution, but for labels in any genre, distributors, or if you're an independent artist, if we're talking to the audience of independent artists watching, metadata, having good metadata and what that enables or prohibits you from doing when you have opportunities to get into deals or send your information to somebody. Shortly before this call, we had an internal meeting here at FiXT, and metadata was a hot topic because there's a lot of metadata that some of these partners in these new deals that we could participate in require. And sometimes it's a non-standard field that they need. And now we have to look at our catalog and go, oh my gosh, we have to go spend a ton of time adding more data. So from an independent artist or independent label, how important is that to you guys on ensuring that you're building a foundation on proper metadata? Very unsexy topic.
It's huge for us. I mean, you could argue it's a big part of what the label even is organizing this. And you're right, it's getting far more complicated. The demands from accounts is a growing issue. I think, Randall could probably speak to this better than anyone. What all these accounts need, metadata or otherwise, changes all the time. Sometimes has to be upgraded. They're asking for things we don't always have. Information we get in late, writing information, publishing information, all this stuff is notoriously late, undecided, misunderstood, especially at the early levels. So for a label, especially of our size and what we offer to our artists, like it's a non-negotiable. We have to be good at this. Our stuff has to show up correctly, all those things. It's a big part of what we do. We have a very experienced and talented operations team that handles that. And it's one of the benefits of being with a label like us. We do that. We do other things that you wouldn't think need to be done. There's a whole giant bucket of stuff like that. This can really affect your money collecting, especially around the world. If you have any level of even small radio success internationally, there's some money out there for you. There's lots of little things to collect. I wouldn't worry about that so much at the very beginning, but if you're not setting up correctly, even at a basic level, you're going to pay the price down the line. For us as a label, when we're looking for new artists, we're looking all over the place at a lot of the things you'd expect, but I would pay attention to how you show up at places. Get a Chartmetric account, look your band up. What do you show up like? Are your socials linked correctly? If you're a small band, it might not be. It might be linking you to some other band that's got the same name. All these things. Clean all that stuff up. Give yourself a good chance to get noticed. It's not super complicated. Just don't mess up the real basic stuff. Like, sure, you can get a song out in 3 days. It's doing you zero good unless you're a giant superstar. So don't do that kind of stuff. Like, just follow the basic best practices in metadata land. It'll take you a little bit of time to learn it. But if you want to be independent and run your own business and control your own rights, grow your career a little bit, get a better label deal, you need to figure out some of these things on your own early on, and you'll be rewarded for it down the line. If you don't want to do those things, make your own choices. That's not everybody's path. I wouldn't say optimizing metadata is the path to success, but doing things on your own, learning how to get some of these basic things done is really important at the beginning part of your career. It's going to pay off down.
Yeah. And I think that also it's super important. So like what you're saying, just being on top of it and thorough, because in a lot of scenarios, when it comes to metadata, you're not going to realize the issue until like way down the line, unless you're being super diligent. An easy example to like what you're saying with Chartmetric, like, doing sort of health checks on your profiles across different platforms, right? Plenty of bad actors, uploading songs on other artists' behalf to basically try and siphon their monthly listeners, but that's obviously not going to impact your algorithmic blueprint, right? Like, who you're being suggested to starts pulling in a different direction than maybe you should be being pulled. It's things like that where it's just a matter of, like we're saying here, just a bit of diligence and health check on, the information that you're providing and how your artistry is being presented on these platforms. It's not always going to be obvious.
Okay. Next topic. I think, Randall, you may have started to bring up this, somebody did, about industry consolidation. There are a lot of companies getting swallowed up. We have been at FiXT. We were with a distributor who got acquired by a major. And then we found ourselves doing direct deals and joining Merlin shortly thereafter. But across the landscape, whether it's labels getting acquired by other labels or distributors getting acquired by majors, how has the consolidation in the industry impacted some of you?
For me, or for Hopeless, I'd say, like, we just made an acquisition. We acquired Fat Records, which is not really probably what we're talking about here, but it is an acquisition, and we're starting to see more indies acquire indies, which I think is amazing versus what it could be, right? And similar to artists having options, labels have more options than ever before too, and I think that's largely really great. I've been through a few rounds of major labels coming and trying to buy all the indies, and we're very grateful that was never our path, and we've for the most part been getting farther and farther out of the major label system over the years. We haven't been in it in quite a long time, maybe 10 years or so in any capacity. And there was a time where it was great for us, and some labels have had success being sold, but that's largely not a great outcome for an indie label, I would say. But there's a lot of opportunities for you now if you want funding or an exit or something like that. We're primarily concerned with consolidation that takes opportunities away from indies. So it's different people have different opinions on this. At least for me personally, I'm not like there could be no consolidation, right? Like, it's tough. Like, when we see a Universal bought this label, we're like, oh, that kind of sucks. And it largely does, but there's also an independent entrepreneur that had a very successful run. There's probably a lot of good things about that. So I don't know that we should always judge that, but there's times where consolidation starts to take opportunities away from the indies to stay independent. And that's where we have a bigger issue with it. So, even something like Downtown, they own a lot of tools that indies use. And is that going to be a problem? Probably not. It's probably fine. We're in some of them, but there's not so many delivery platforms. There's not so many analytics partners, and there are not so many royalty processors. And if you're independent, especially at any kind of scale, like a Hopeless or a FiXT or a Monstercat, you're going to need these tools. The majors have their own fancy systems that make sense for them. The indies, even big ones, don't really have these as proprietary things. So I'm kind of more concerned about that side of the consolidation than some label gets bought by Universal or whatever. That has its own issues, but I think it's less of a problem for the indies day to day.
The piece of it that's really incredible, and I agree with you on indies buying indies is great. Like it keeps it. I'm biased. I have a neon sign on the wall behind me that says support independent music. But all of this to say, the indies together are bigger than any major. And that's why we have collective negotiating bodies and we have collective organizations like A2IM that we all belong to that help us in navigating this space. And so I love seeing that. As far as your question though, James, with the consolidation, especially in the distribution space, as competitors have wound up becoming part of major label conglomerates, it's been smashingly good for us. There's a lot of people who don't want to be a part of that. And it's opened up windows for discussions with people that we might not have had the opportunity to really talk to prior to that. I don't think there's any instance though where an indie organization gets bought by a major and heads don't roll. They can't even keep their own heads from rolling. There's no instance where they don't consolidate departments like finance, back office function, et cetera, where people don't lose their gigs. And that to me is really, even if there's any labels out there that are considering being bought and sold, ensuring that you have protections for your people, I think are so important. I think it's so important because at the core of independent music is great people. Know a lot of these panelists, but I recognize you guys. Like we've hung out in New York at A2IM Indie Week 1,000 times. I just didn't know that I knew. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, bit newsworthy. We're actually acquired in a JV with Create not too long ago for Monstercat. And to your point, Randall, that was something that was really, really important to us in finding a suitor for that is being able to still function as Monstercat, being able to still be the label that we want to for these artists and champion artists the way that we have for 14 years coming up, and keep the overwhelming majority of our team. I think that's in that spirit of indies, acquiring indies. One thing that's really been great about it actually is being able to trade notes with a lot of the other folks under that umbrella. So, for example, I had some really great chats with K7, a very different part of the dance music world, and being able to kind of look at under the hood with each other and trade those types of notes allows for genre or knowledge expansion in a way that isn't always possible.
Let's move to another topic. And a few of you have brought up, maybe some of it was before we started the actual event, but a few of you mentioned some different territories and thinking about global opportunities, emerging markets, if it's a territory that is really connected for you. I'd be curious just to kind of go around and hear all of your takes. What's a key territory that, outside of the US major market that has emerged for you, or something meaningful, a new DSP, an artist, or something in your business that has taken off somewhere else that is has some insights to it?
I mean, for us in country, Australia is such an amazing emerging market. Like the country listeners in Australia are much higher than I think most people are realizing when you launch something. I get a lot of conversations with labels like, what's going on in Australia? So that has been really cool to see, where a lot of artists are now talking about their Australian touring and what they can do over there and selling content. How do we ship over there? Selling content, selling merch. So for us, that's been interesting to see.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah. There are a bunch of rednecks down there, I think, at their heart.
I was just there. I saw quite a bit of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. They want to go out and fish and like mud bog, and like they're as more southern than I am, I think.
Well,
There's
that's
a lot of
not hard to
kindred
do,
spirit.
Dustin.
Yeah.
That's true.
Australia has long been like a trigger country for country music. It's when I was a country music publisher, we paid really close attention to the US, Canada, and Australia first. Germany and the UK coming shortly behind that. I think trigger cities are real, and I think that especially if you're leveraging digital ads, et cetera, focusing on those does yield good results, especially if you're chasing finding new fan bases, et cetera. Most American artists aren't thinking about buying ads in Mexico City, but your cost per click there is less than it's going to be in New York, and your chances of finding an audience there are going to be pretty strong. There's actually there's a great report that Chartmetric does annually on trigger cities, and it kind of changes a little bit just depending on what's going on, where the wind's blowing. But I would urge anybody on this call who's curious to know where things are indexing today to just Google it and see what you find, because the Trigger Cities report is really, really, really great. And it's all based on statistical evidence of consumption.
Yeah, I think that there's a real trend that the US is not cultural trendsetters like they used to be in the last 100 years. That basically what this article is saying is that, hey, if something's doing well in the US, it's probably done well first in Brazil or Mexico or the Philippines or Malaysia, South Korea. We're seeing a lot of that pop off long before it pops off in the United States. Not to mention it is cheaper to target them. And I think it's sort of this idea in my mind. I have a theory that I think that the US has been targeted so heavily for new things for so long that we're sort of exhausted of new things, that we're tired of being targeted. But these other countries have not. And so they're willing to accept new things. I mean, I think there's a reason why we all still go to Marvel movies and, watch reboots. I mean, if they rebooted Back to the Future, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Give me something I know.
For us, some of our biggest artist development stories are international based. All Time Low, one of our first big artists that broke through, really got most of their attention in the UK before the US, especially from the media. We were on the daytime radio there, like a proper large artist on the level of a Fall Out Boy or a Paramore. Meanwhile, I would go to radio stations in America and people would laugh at me because that moment had sort of ended in the US. In the UK and Europe and Australia, it was still happening for another few years. And Ultimo was really there to step into it and became an arena act in many of those areas, lifted Hopeless, the label, up itself above many of our larger peers at the time, because we were the only people doing business over there. And it largely came out of trying to find fans. So if you're working in a niche, I think international is really good for you, because if you take something like punk rock or pop punk or anything emo, anything like that, there's a little community of those kids all over the world. There's a community in Brazil, there's a community in Mexico. You don't even have to advertise to them. You can, and it would help, but just talk to them. There are little radio shows in those markets that aren't going to change the game for you, but they'll make you a little part of that community. I would talk to those artists directly at your level. Look for people who got about the same level of experience in a market where you think there's some kids who might like you. Hit them up, DM them, try to create a relationship. Don't hit up giant artists. Find artists at your level who want to grow with you. For us, Neck Deep, who's really our biggest current artist, it's a pop punk band from the UK playing a very American style of music. This goes back about 15 years now, but they really were the only band like that in the UK. And it wasn't until we brought them to America and took a bit of a risk as a label, which is something a label can and will do for you if you have a good label, that created a narrative and a fan base that then we were able to sell back to the UK, and it created a whole thing. And from there, a career started to really develop. And lately, we've had a giant boost in that band's career in Southeast Asia from some viral hits that just took off due to, the culture cutting through. The band got big enough at the right time. And we've used that two viral trends in Southeast Asia to then expand that back to other markets. That band's now become a truly global band that can do maybe 5,000 tickets in just about any city in the world, which I don't think many artists can say, but that was earned over 15 years of being active in these markets, and not always in the fanciest ways, sleeping on floors, not even always going, just talking to people in the market. Try to mean something. If you do mean something in a market, even a little bit, there could be local opportunities for you. There are local playlists, there are local media. It's not game changing, but it gets you in the community. And at first, I would focus on traction and momentum over anything of size. Just move forward, find community. There's more outside of America than you would think. There's more outside of America than inside America.
I think on the rock and metal side, we know that things are kind of blowing up in South America, especially in Brazil. Mexico has a really emerging community. On the FiXT side, and James, you might be able to talk on this if you want to, but we really saw a big audience in Russia. And I mean, obviously things happened there, but for the couple of months that Spotify existed there, that was a big boom for us. And so kind of what I really think we're saying here is don't pigeonhole yourself or don't think you just have to focus on the United States. Like there's industries, there's people, there's everybody out there, and there could be a wider audience for you.
There's a lot of artists that are like afraid to see that on Spotify, especially in rock where Brazil and Mexico blow up. And they're like, what's up with that? Like, can we get rid of that? I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, there's just too many people from Mexico. Like, good? Like, it's so bizarre. They like reframe the way you think about it.
Yeah, I think coming back to what we were talking about before of having those foundational bases of fan bases, if you're like, to drive this point home, like drum and bass, UK is the all-time mecca for drum and bass. We've had so many artists that have their success in drum and bass first in Australia and New Zealand, building strong fan bases out there, lead to them then having like a really great presence on an influential radio station in Georgia FM. That leading to things like some big wins with BBC Radio 1. It's all those types of things that then come back to, the real target that they have, of trying to crack into the UK comes from building out like a real case, like proof case in these other smaller markets.
Yeah, I'll share. I think what something Kurtis was alluding to there. We had a huge audience in Russia, and I think for a long time we didn't monetize it. There was a lot of piracy, to be honest, from the territory, but we knew there were fans there, and then we finally got into deals with Yandex Music and VK Music to actually monetize it. And then, due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, those deals went away. And we were very aggressive in wanting to keep our music active in the territory as a service to our fans, and felt like we needed to, fish where the fish are. So even if we were not getting monetized, we chose to keep our music on those platforms to serve the fans so that they didn't have the music pulled. And then we were able to find another distribution deal to keep that monetization active. And it is a significant revenue stream for us that we have this fan base that we're still servicing. So wherever your fans are, if they're out there, find them and serve them. And we have about 20 minutes left. There's a couple topics I'd like to still get to and a couple questions we might have to get to rapid fire for everybody to answer. But one of the big ones, AI in the music industry. And there's multiple sides to this. AI tools that you might be using in your office to streamline, optimize your work, do research, pile reports, whatever that might be. But then, of course, AI generated music and being uploaded to DSPs and taking market share from real musicians. And then the nuances within that, using those systems as a part of the process versus that's iterative and is still very much human control, just that as you might use synthesizers and programming and other automated tools versus people that are typing in a text prompt and hitting upload to DSPs. So there's a lot that could be tackled there, but I would love to hear kind of how each of you would take your view or whatever commentary you'd like to add on what's happening in your space with AI.
So I'll jump on this. As a distributor, we're very, very in tune with AI as it applies to our day-to-day functioning of the tasks and the things that we're able to utilize it for and to leverage to make us quicker and more efficient, as well as its role in the creative process. I think it's important that all of the folks watching this take into consideration that the U.S. Copyright Office has ruled on AI. AI is not copyrightable. So if you create something 100% with AI, you may not copyright it, which means you may not monetize. And the tools being implemented and used to figure out what's AI and what's not are getting better and better and more effective. We, as a distributor, have brought on, much like the copyright registration forms, voluntary disclosures into our distribution that ask, what portion of this was created with AI? Was any of it created with AI? I think AI as a tool is fantastic, but it shouldn't replace the creative process of the human element. And that's kind of my stance and Symphonic stance at large.
Can I ask you a question? I think because I'm a dummy when it comes to this sort of stuff. When you said it's not monetizable, does that mean, because I always thought, okay, you can't copyright it, meaning anybody can also monetize your AI music, but it still means that it gets paid when it's streamed, correct?
Well, so there's a lot of distributors who are refusing to touch anything that's AI. The DSPs are going to end up cracking down on it. Do you think Spotify is going to pay you for AI? Come on.
I mean, no, would love that. Hey, I'm not taking sides here. I'm just wondering. I just got a question.
Yeah. Industry plant likes AI, everybody. No, it's really, it's the Wild West right now. I mean, right now, detection is the hard part.
Yeah.
So that's why disclosure is such a big piece of the discussion. If we're all fooling ourselves if we think that there's not going to be tools created that absolutely detect AI. And like I teach at Belmont, there are tools that we can utilize and run term papers through to pull up likelihood that it was created with ChatGPT. Very, very easy. There's very, very easy detection tools on text alone. So to think that that's not going to get flipped and deployed on the music side so that the DSPs don't have to pay for things, I think is foolish. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they're going to not pay for as much as they can not pay for. And I don't mean to pick on Spotify because we distribute to 230 DSPs. If they can get away with not paying for it, they're not going to pay for it. And
Well, I mean, does it really matter to them though? Either way, they're paying out the same portion of the pie. Do they really care if it's going out to somebody who created a prompt versus a real artist?
I mean, that's a semantic question. But if we're going to ask that question, then let's also ask why they've put the content rules in that they put in with regards to not monetizing things like lo-fi and ambient music.
Fair. That's a good point.
There's a lot of things that have happened in the last year or two, and I'm not going to pick on any one DSP because several of them have moved the goalposts because that's what happens. But those DSPs move those goalposts so that monetization rates are much lower on certain genres. So why would they do that? If they're going to do that, why wouldn't they go after machine created music?
I think they should. And one of my favorite pastimes is going to the subreddits for these people who create these AI generated songs and reading about how frustrated they are that nobody's listening to their music. That brings me so much joy because I'm like, well, welcome to the show. They thought they would just put out music and people would just listen.
Well, and there's a new company that's popped up called Humanable, which is a company that we're actually partnered with it's kind of like a USDA stamp that says this was human created, and they'll litigate against people who take that stamp and utilize it and who are not actually human created, because what they're trying to do is really draw a line in the sand to say, hey, real creatives with real hearts and their beating chests and real brains in their heads created this music over here. So let's give it love. Whereas some of the machine created things over here, we maybe don't want to give as much love to as an audience. It's still early days though. Like I said, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, we're big believers that, AI shouldn't replace human creativity on any front. And unfortunately, that should word is in there, and it's a little out of our control, right? Like that's our ethos, and that's where we're coming from. And I think the monetization copyright issue on AI probably means that for mainstream DSPs and the normie places, that'll largely get cracked down on. It probably still siphons from the pool in some way, but like that's probably not the big issue moving forward. That stands for 100, at least from my understanding, it stands for 100% AI created music where you type in a prompt, say like, make me a song, something like that. What's more complicated, and I think will be very interesting, is stuff like these Suno creators, who I think you could make an argument are maybe closer to an EDM artist than an AI artist. And how do we want to, as an industry, accept and interact with those artists? I've seen a lot of people fall by the wayside of thinking, hey, this ain't music. That's a pretty big graveyard in this industry. And we're always challenging ourselves to not get stuck in that way of thinking. So we're pretty open-minded on creativity. I think there's an optimistic story here to open up a lot of creativity that's been locked up. If you're a talented songwriter who has ideas but don't know how to play an instrument, this is what an amazing universe this has opened up for you. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of garbage in there, but there's going to be some really amazing gems in there too. And probably some of the more interesting creativity in the future will be AI augmented or something. Who knows? So we're trying to make sure our artists are prepared for this. All I think though in the short term is it reinforces the stuff that we've all been saying. If you're playing anonymous music where like your value proposition was I played the guitar competently, AI has already killed you, right? That's done. TV shows are giving you $1,000 for a little guitar lick leading into commercial. Like all that stuff's over. But if you can find a way to mean something to people, this AI stuff is largely not a competitor to that in any way. And you might find ways to use it that help you tell your story that you find quite valuable, allow you to do more stuff.
Yeah, I don't think AI can replace. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to kind of touch on something from the other side of the aisle as far as from a listener perspective of and listener experience. So I think that's one thing that I often think about is with algorithmic suggesting, and sorry that we're again picking on Spotify, but we're getting to a point of the snake eating its own tail when it comes to like different radio functions or algorithmic suggesting when it comes to a certain genre where it's almost becoming a flat plane and there's a lack of true music discovery or fan affinity, which is ironic coming from the same platform that talks about 2% of super listeners account for like 50% of merch and ticket sales for a lot of artists. So needing to have that artist to fan connection is super important. So I think that there is going to be a critical mass when it comes to those types of things. But I do think there are some really great usages of AI when it comes to a listener experience. For one, I think the idea of like daylist being a huge game changer for Spotify and having a better understanding of how music integrates into people's daily lives and knowing that it's not always going to be someone completely focused on that moment and tracking their life instead.
Yeah, I mean, AI can't replace like a human experience or an emotional connection, or even it can't do a live performance for you. But separating from, I think, that side of the AI to the other side where it is a tool. I know at FiXT, James and I both use Chat GPT. It's great for research. It's great for doing certain things. It's not a replacement. It is a tool. It is an add-on to what you're already doing, in my opinion.
I know artists who struggle to write great copy in their own voice. And so they'll literally train AI on their own voice and be like, can you write me something about this? I need to post this today. And it'll do it in their own voice. And I don't blame them. It's like, it's so much work. And so like using it as a tool in that capacity, I actually don't even mind how writers, I mean, Nashville, big songwriting city, they'll write songs. They will implement it through Suno to write in the voice of, Blake Sheldon to pitch to him. Like, that's not what's going out the door, but it's giving Blake a better idea of what makes sense for him. And I don't think that's such a bad thing.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes. I want to hit a couple quick fire questions. Connor, what is your favorite data or analytics source to look at? What data or analytics do you care about in your role?
Are we talking about like a software source or like
like what specific piece of data, regardless of what the source is? But if you have a suggestion on a
Yeah, I think everything that you should be thinking about when it comes to data of listener behavior and kind of health of your fan base should be surrounding of intention, conversion, and retention. How many people are you putting in front of you? How many people that have been put in front of you are you then converting to fans or listeners? How many of them are making further intentions, saving music, pre-saving your albums, buying your tickets, having, and how many of them are coming back repeatedly? That is how you build a foundation. Everything should surround that. Spotify, you have your segmentations on Spotify for artists of your super listeners versus your moderate listeners versus your light listeners. When it comes to active listening, you have your streams per listener. You can look at YouTube with your average playtime that people have on the different content that you upload or music that you upload. Apple, you can look at, and reason type, you can look at Shazams. All of those are different avenues of boiling down to the same thing when it comes to intention, retention, and conversion.
Ian, at Hopeless, you have a legacy in certain genres, but in recent years, I've seen you guys experimenting with some new genres, bringing in some new sounds. But how do you guys think about genre versus culture in terms of what you're doing with your signings and A&R process?
Yeah, culture is a good way to put it. Culture oriented versus sound oriented, and it's something we've seen change over the years. The label started as a pretty straightforward SoCal punk and ska label that then had Avenged Sevenfold, and then went to At All Time Low, and it all over the place within that little community. And we've always been comfortable doing that. And over time, we really found that Hopeless's core strength is helping unique artists build careers that are meaningful to them and long-term and valuable, and focusing on those brands. So the difference between an Avenged Sevenfold, an All Time Low, a Neck Deep, a Scene Queen, a TX2, I don't see a difference at all. These are all strong brands that have great relationships with fans and mean something and take up a place in their community that matters. And Hopeless as a label really exists to serve that and enable that, make that grow bigger. So that's the sort of common thread that we see, and over maybe the past 10 years or so, as listening habits have changed, streaming is a big part of this, where, when I was a kid, you only listen to this kind of music, and, if the other kids you didn't talk to, that kind of thing. And now the playlist generation, that's probably a 10-year-old story at this point also. So kids are listening to all sorts of stuff. We've really looked at this more as a lifestyle and community-based organization. If there's an alternative kid out there who needs to be spoken to, we're kind of here for that. And we're open to that sound being, could be lots of different things.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Kurtis, FiXT has embraced, a hybrid model as a label, publisher, and merch company. How do you think about the diversity of services a label must offer to attract talent in the current ecosystem?
I think you do have to be pretty diverse. I mean, I think a lot of companies are kind of trying to be everything to everyone. And I know Randall, you might have mentioned, but that white glove experience, I think that's very important. So being able to kind of, especially in what we're trying to accomplish as a label, but helping artists grow and maintain their careers, being able to help them out with their merch, their distribution, their sync, their everything like that. I think it's very important to just not pigeonhole yourself into doing one thing.
And Dustin, what's an unconventional tactic you've used recently or over your career to really connect artists online with digital marketing or content, something that you wouldn't expect?
I think I talked about this the other day. I think using ads in a unique way that people don't expect. Some of my best advertising is when the content is just completely out of pocket, run at unique times of day. I had one artist that we literally just had him look at the phone while his music played while he was on the toilet. And we only played it between 1 and 3 a.m. And he was like, "Why are you up watching me on the toilet listening to my music?" And it just went bananas. I think out of pocket stuff like that, so many artists, when they run ads or their labels, they're almost trying to be more like brands and big brands when they should go the other way with it and just be crazy and outlandish. We watch these musicians be characters and excel at it, but then they're afraid to do the same thing. So
Great. Randall, as I've watched Symphonic over the years, you guys have some incredible educational content in your blog and emails. And even not being a client currently using it, I still look at what you guys put out and find value in it. What are some of the key educational pieces that you put out that people might not realize you guys put time and effort into?
That's a great question. I wasn't aware that our blog was as good as it was until I saw a competitor's blog quoting our blog and linking back to us, which is the highest form of compliment. All the best information with Symphonic starts at the blog. And the blog is blog.symphonic.com, I believe. I hope I got that URL right. We have full-time staff that all they do is create articles, and the articles are all topical, and they're all, touching on new items in the industry, whether it be AI or spatial audio or, hashtags that you've got to use in 2025 in your Instagram posts. It's really, really good stuff. And it's something we're really proud of because of where we started from an artist who didn't know what he was doing. The whole goal is artist empowerment. It's in all of our values statements for the company, is that we will empower independent artists. And so part of that is helping to educate them. In addition to the blog, we do seminars and symposiums from time to time. We do continuing education kind of events. And if you are a part of the blog, then you'll know about that. So if you subscribe there, you'll know what we're doing there. Outside of the blog, for any Symphonic users that are there, there's a website that's very helpful called symphonic.help. And what that is a knowledge base that is leveraged and utilized by my entire support staff. And it's really one of those tools where if you know it exists, you can get the answer to any question you have. Hey, man, what DPI artwork should I load up for Symphonic? I don't even know. I'm about to bounce this down out of Canvas. What DPI do I need? Boom, you search it. It's a wiki. It brings back the answer and it takes you exactly what you need to know. Now, this is for navigating Symphonic specifically, but there's also bigger at large statements within that around marketing strategy and go to, release strategy, go to market strategy. So I urge folks to look in on that as well. But, educating and empowering artists is core to our existence and is something that, by the way, thanks for calling it out, because something we're very proud of.
Yeah. And thank you again to everybody for attending. I know we're just about at time. If any of you panelists have a hard out, please feel free to jump out. But I'd be remiss if I didn't address a few of the Q&A questions. And if anybody wants to jump in, again, kind of rapid fire answer. I want to thank everybody who attended. And again, all of you panelists for donating your time to help educate and inspire those who attended. So I'm just going to go kind of in reverse order, but how to
I've got a
encourage
hard
artists.
out. I appreciate it. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Dustin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dustin.
How to encourage artists to produce more social content. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Encourage them to produce more.
How to encourage artists to produce more social content.
You have to produce more social content. There's no way around it. That's it. Sorry.
I think a lot of people, the same way that Dustin was alluding to it too, artists being hesitant to produce social content because they're worried that it has to be this like super thought out, like heavily produced, clean thing that is supposed to go viral immediately. It does not need to be that. It just needs to be a through line between you and your fan base, right? Think about what it is that, makes you the artist that you are. And it's likely that there is a connection between that and what gets your fans to gravitate to you. And that's all you're working from in your social media. It doesn't need to be anything more than that.
Yeah, be authentic. It doesn't need to be overly produced. And I think actually it might be a detriment at this point if
Totally.
it is overly produced. I think people just look for authenticity. Grab your phone, just do a quick video. That's all it needs to be.
It's not so much a matter of what it is, but it's more a matter of that it is. And I think that a lot of artists let perfect be the enemy of good enough. I actually, this is funny. I have a note on my phone because I talked to so many artists about this, and Ian's going to crack up because the name of this note is Hopeless Artists, but it has nothing to do with Hopeless Records. It's because some artists are hopeless. But it is literally a list of content ideas that when people say, I don't know what to post, I go, here, let me forward this note to you. And this is going to give you things you can post about, but things that make you unique and interesting. Talk about your first piercing. I mean, it doesn't have to be all the artistry, and it shouldn't be all the artistry, frankly. Yeah, I get so sick of artists that are like, stream this, pre-save this, buy my ticket to this, consume. It's like, give me, but you're not filling your audience's cup at all. So one of the things we talk about with social strategies to the artists we work with is making sure that you've got a social mix that is filling the cup as much as it's taking from it.
We have an artist that went into the project. This wasn't for social content, but went into the project of rebuilding his entire home studio and then brought fans along on that process, like literally down to the point of going and getting more, plywood and, noise canceling panels and things like that. Just simple, like running to Home Depot type of content. Doesn't have to be crazy.
Yeah, like to go on what Randall said, I think there is a cadence to kind of like having this give, ask. But if you're constantly asking your fan base, I think that's going to wear on them.
Yeah, I'd also consider what you're asking for too at what times. I mean, if you're just getting started, I wouldn't ask people to drop, $40 on your vinyl or something like that. You ask them to watch another video, right? Like try to make that commitment appropriate to where you're at. The silver bullet we found to getting artists to post more on socials has been actually pretty easy, and it was just to sign artists that are posting on socials. It's unfortunate, like if you're a label asking that question, like that's kind of it. The other answer is like was kind of brought up, like help your artists see that this is a communication tool. So if the take is from the artist, like I'm not going to make TikToks because I don't want to learn a dance, like you're going to be outcompeted just across the board. Like these are communication tools. If you can't figure out a way to give a repeatable elevator pitch about why your band matters to a fan base, you're going to have a really hard time succeeding. You got to figure that out. And I wouldn't even look at it as socials. This is just talking to an audience, and don't get caught up in the idea that it's even socials. This is also something that to some degree, this is where partners come in. I do think it could be an easy answer to say like, I need X amount of thousands of dollars from my label to make content, but it's not really that appropriate nowadays, I think, to be signing artists to, traditional record label deals, especially, and then saying, hey, go make some TikToks, kid. Like, that's ridiculous. So the label does need to support that effort, especially if the label feels like that's an important part of the marketing. But it's a give and take. Like money spent on a bad idea is you just keep the money. Don't spend it. Don't spend 10 grand on a social campaign just to have one. If it has no idea or no connection to you as an artist, it's just treading water and making you feel like something's happening when you're really falling farther behind. So I'd focus on the idea and get out of the idea that these are socials at all. Just you're talking to fans.
Are there any paid advertising suggestions here for most effectively spending ad dollars right now? Any quick answers on where to focus paid ad dollars?
We've seen some success with music videos on Google, and we've also seen meta ads do very well. I will say I'm hesitant on influencer campaigns. I think you really got to find the right influencer and the right audience for that to make sense.
I think to actually do like showcase.
I would say, just piggybacking that, utilizing those tools on platform as a distributor, if we talk to our reps and say, hey, why didn't we get any love on that last week? They will immediately look in and go, well, they're not using marquee, they're not running ads, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. Every platform natively has tools that they want you to utilize on their platform. And that's why having an Apple artist account and a Pandora artist account and a Spotify artist account, an Amazon artist account is so important, because they will look and see if you've checked the boxes. And if you have, you stand a greater chance in succeeding. And if you have not, best of luck.
And then maybe to extra piggyback on that separate topic, but like, please just don't focus on Spotify. Like, please make sure you're going out and Randall just said, they all have their different things, but make sure you're not just doing Spotify's thing. Do Apple's thing, do Pandora's thing, do Deezer's thing. Kind of get out there and make sure you're spreading your content out.
We have artists that are touring off of success that they've had for a great portion of their overall streaming success coming from a place like Apple. It doesn't have to be all one a la carte like route.
Yeah, and these guys are more experts on this than I am, but I would encourage you to throw some ad dollars at stuff that builds your brand and your overall audience versus like, click this link to get to a song or something. I'm sure there's a place for that, but especially starting out, acquiring fans is where that cost will definitely be worth it versus like a little boost in streaming and not really going to help you much with what advertising costs. But if you can be acquiring fans, get them onto your mailing list, get them following a social or something that's sticky, there's probably something well worth it in there in a targeted, pretty low cost way. All
right. Last question, just to respect everybody's time. I appreciate you guys sticking around a little long. And it's based on one of the questions in the chat, with streaming, social media, and AI changing sync, how can artists stay ahead? Is it really about the story and fan base, or are there other strategies that make a bigger difference right now?
I think that's always going to be at its core, no matter how the industry changes. Like, there's no way around that. So with that being said, I think honestly, just constantly being a sponge, keeping yourself up to date and research what new products are being introduced to these different platforms, what different trends are happening. Be a sponge, because there might be plenty of things that we say today that are going to be irrelevant in a year. It's constantly changing.
We'll end on that. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Randall. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Kurtis. Appreciate Dustin being here. And thanks to everybody that attended. And we will be doing more of these. For anybody that wants to follow up on FiXT Academy, fixtacademy.com. We're doing monthly webinars and educational content. And again, appreciate everybody on the panel for being a part of this first one. So thank you all.
right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for attending.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.